Greetings and welcome to Liminal Light, a show that explores the languages of myth and star, earth, sky, tongue, and spirit through weekly astrological forecasts. I'm your host, Chris. Enjoy. When stress is applied over time, when you engage in a strict schedule of action, when energy flows into a structure, there are physical results. Whether or not these are tectonic shifts producing massive shock waves, silent and subtle hand motions that signal reorganization of the system, the massacring of incarcerated populations, or legal restrictions preventing expressions of violence is largely still unknown. Mars has come to visit Saturn in Capricorn. The planet of cutting, burning, bashing, and crisis action has been mixing significations with the planet of negation, duration, restriction, and contraction. Is this the critical blow coming down from industrial pistons to crush us and then pulverize our remains? Or is it the warrant to arrest the gunslinger and the bars he'll hold and bark behind once stripped of his revolver? It seems to go all ways, showing up in the historical record as all of the above. Unnerving as that is, it is the malefics we here face, the lesser and the greater. Issues of energy, how it's used, how we structure our lives, and if we have the vitality and stamina to adhere to the structure. What structures need our attention, which need the constructive raps of the hammer to pound in nails with which the destructive blows of demolition. And if our hammer or hammer arm even has it in it to apply the pounding required, or if we are in need of a whole other strategy that must be painstakingly erected. Whether this is as glaringly obvious as a totaled vehicle slumped in your dooryard, or as reptilian as the quiet repositioning of the patient snake motionlessly waiting in the grass. Your competition may not be aware that you have a whole new plan and are expecting you to approach in your usual fashion, although they might arrive with a slow-crawling tank, whereas you're only carrying a sneaky switchblade in your boot. This period could be easily entail strapping on tool belts and getting productive, getting chained to a wall and beaten, or finding yourself in a heated court battle, or simply not being able to get your lawnmower started. This, of course, means different things for the world at large as it does for us personally. But of course, the insanity we read about in the news are at least a percentage of the times the annex of people that actually exist. So if it's your fate to be a part of history as it unfolds, you may stumble into encyclopedic infamy. Otherwise, double up on the protective measures, and this means magic for many of you, and rightly so. Of course, the tool belt version is most desirable, within reasonable reach and advisable. You're going to want to find something to do with the energy, likely something physical, well-planned, and of a timely nature. Make sure this something relatively safe and be aware of your surroundings. Find that slow Saturn pace that will get us all through the next couple years of his rulership. Also think about what actions or what yang-fueled excesses simply need to be stopped in your life, and make a rule to limit them or bury them beneath some stones in your personal cemetery. Venus is in Taurus, so even though that part of you had to die and you don't do that anymore, it doesn't mean you can't keep the grave fresh with flowers and well remembered. R.I.P. Venus being in Taurus is an important factor. She's in rulership here, sensitizing us to earthly delights and pleasures of the flesh. She has her say about what we experience firsthand. Even if storms are approaching and there's rumbling in the distance, nothing is stopping us from sexual satisfaction or Epicurean indulgence. A thunderstorm might constrict us to indoors, but does not negate the creative urge or silence the muse. Just ask Lord Byron and Mary Shelley and Company. On Sunday, April 1st, some fire and brimstone for our Easter morning, with sensual romance lacing our bunny chocolate and lurking in the basket grass. Not only this, but Mercury retrograde in Aries comes conjunct with the Sun at 2 p.m. EST, what is called an inferior conjunction, which is a moment of sudden realization and insight from the halls of the dead, from hidden underground libraries, from the forgotten past, or from the very essence of what you hold in your hand or stand upon beneath your feet, like Hermes turning over stones from below and extending messages up from tunnels and caves, envelopes arriving from Hades. For those planning on attending Easter Mass in the extraordinary form, Latin incantations echoing in old cathedrals might just carry insight upon wafting incense to you from the rosewood grain carved into the face of a saint. A memory is set wobbling within your mind of being mystified by the stained glass and stone lungs of churches and youth, and wondrous imaginings fall from the shelf into your lap, where you paw through the past in a dossier of clues that could connect you once more to not only your old imaginary friend, but some regressed incarnation that has something they've been trying to tell you about the village your great-grandfather was born. Just rip up the squeaky floorboard in your parents' barn and retrieve the cigar box with the skeleton key. It could unlock elements of yourself you didn't even know were missing, and complete an identity you hadn't realized was lacking logic. As always, if you can, get into meditative position before the exact conjunction, as these are brief but potent exchanges between deities and mortal minds. They are sometimes experienced as something just suddenly seeming to click. This particular conjunction is assisted by Luna's opposition to Uranus, who is also in Aries. The moon is now slightly on the wane, but still quite full, and feelings might be in sight of unmitigated personal revitalization. Our needs for general equilibrium might be set swinging by what individual revolutions these insights deliver, and could throw the sliders around in our social harmonies. We'll likely be ready for a remix, but we still have to balance our vocal volume with the other sounds in the song, bust in some beats from a forgotten track. There could be stuff on an old tape that turns this tune into gold. The Sun-Mercury conjunction and the Uranus end of opposition occur in Mars-ruled Aries, so there is more than likely a relation to what is discovered in these epiphanies with what drama is playing out in the contraction-action blending. On Monday, April 2nd, I've discussed the Saturn and Mars team-up at length, and here it goes down at 11 a.m. Go easy through possible frustrations, dangers, energy blocks, maliciousness, and foundation attacks, even if it is you doing the attacking. Get a sense of your balance and your footing compared to the obstacle course as is laid out before you, being aware of any trips or booby traps. Then, with bearings gathered, move systematically through the obstacles and begin climbing up the levels. Some may find their groove and put behind them a period of industriousness. Just keep aware of snares, as you would in a busy restaurant kitchen where scalding substances and razor-sharp implements are being swiftly passed to and fro, or in professional sports, when the bodies around you intend to ram you and shoulder you into the ground, or in construction, when you may be locked in a vortex of loud power saws, while others do the same only 4 feet away, facing the other direction. Keep aware and take it one step at a time. As discussed, depending on where this hits your chart, you may experience mental, immune, creative, or monetary blocks, or alternately, unusual excitements, positive and negative. When we look at Jupiter and Venus coming together and say, this could manifest in a lot of different ways, we might neglect to sketch out every which one and just don a positive outlook. When Saturn and Mars come together and we say the same, it's most likely we want an extensive list of what could go wrong, although that list would be too voluminous to be effective. Simply clean your body, pray to whomever, smudge your zone, and keep your wits about you, and try to get some stuff done. Coincidentally, the moon will be sextile the malefic conjunction in Mars' sign Scorpio, suggesting that we may be our own undoing, as the above is willing to collaborate with voracious hungers and destructive desires, needs for intensity, emotional trauma or initiation, and primal yearnings. Although we also have Jupiter in Scorpio trying to hold down the fort through general coherence of said dimension, and the moon is also waning, beginning to drain and let go. So perhaps we might be loosening our grip on these things that might otherwise get us into trouble. Hopefully. Additionally, this could cast some impressionistic moonlight on understanding dark secrets revealed, shedding some understanding on how and why the assassin's gun case might be locked. That this occurs not even 24 hours after the inferior conjunction, secrets spoken by the dead to those who press their ears to the tombs, seems likely to influence which way the triggers get trapped. On Wednesday, April 4th, things move on, slowly as Saturn and Mars, now separating, remain in proximity for more than a couple days. Mercury continues this backward walk to where he once was, carrying our re-examination of who we are, who we once were, and what we've done into more primary territory. What did we originally want to do? What had we wanted to say from the get-go? We could begin again to blurt things out we said already or hadn't gotten a chance to say. This could be cathartic and bring matters closer to closure, but are likely to be out of context and cause trouble. These notions might be good fuel for revamped logic systems, but might be better if kept to ourselves, or at least mulled over a bit and articulated to be less of a single-pointed stab. As Mercury backs up into a square with Mars on Wednesday at 3 a.m., and our identity editing could clash with the moves we are currently trying to make. If we are thinking of resurrecting old characters and giving them the microphone, it might set off some alarms. This could stir up the perfect diversion of our sneak attack, or we could get lost in a smokescreen we didn't intend to release. Be mindful of what your strategy might be, what you want to accomplish, and how your Twitter meltdowns might detract from your steady ascent, or even cause an unnecessary landslide. This will hopefully be assisted by Mars's progression into Capricorn's second decan, where the focus is more on determined focus and less on positional advantage and possessing optimum territory. Keep your eyes on the prize, and keep your gameplay both relentless and agile, while remembering to keep conserving energy. Your enemy doesn't care if you are outmaneuvered, knocked out, or exhausted to defeat, so keep all factors in mind. On Thursday, April 5th, next Mercury encounters Saturn by square in his return trip. Our double-back motions to pick up dropped elements of our unique voice run us headlong into walls and barricades, chasms, divides, and impassable peaks. There may be elements of our identities that cannot be retrieved, or lapses in our logic that simply cannot be brought together. We can't think our way around what society presents us, and we can't be who we were in different days. We might have to then create our own rules and apply our own laws to ourselves, put limits on our own voices, say things that are difficult to say, like no, and make efforts to defend ourselves, and even defend our identity and individuality, to fight against forces insurmountable simply as an act of protest, or alternately, know when futility could lead to our own destruction, and move on from clashes of logic that cannot be resolved. Learn how we might be better able to direct the fire of our tongues, as we will never plasma torch through a mountain one lick at a time. The mountain will defeat us, but the invocations which fill balloons can carry baskets of those lost in searching for their logic over precipices that could otherwise not be passed. Achieving heights where something we once attacked becomes instead inert, dangerous up close, but at a distance unable to interfere, although for many it will prove difficult to hold our tongues. All this could have discouraged and exhausted us by Saturday, April 7th, when the moon comes to conjoin Saturn and we feel the pressures of the fortress. She doesn't prefer Capricorn, where there are more needs to work and there are less to rest, to ration rather than to renew. Although Venus has come to trine Saturn by 9 a.m., which can dramatically change the occasion. Venus runs her hands over the exquisite stonework, marvels at the carvings, finds ways to feel as part of the landscape, to find value in all the work this monument took. The spiraling Neolithic cairns took not mere man-hours, but man-millennia, and in that there is simple yet devastating beauty. After a week where Mars and Saturn have teamed up, we might at last sit atop the tower we built, uncork a bottle of well-aged wine from the cellar, and celebrate what we have established. We can derive pleasure from the earth we inhabit, from the area we defend and from within the temples of worship. That smell of soil and the coldness of crypts are like bombs on both our bodies and our souls. There's always more to be done, always another move to be made. And though we could become cross at those that put themselves in our path, we must be a matrix of both forward and back, of above and below, of airy thought and fiery spirit, watery feeling and earthly actuality. As it is in the sinking sanctuaries and crumbling castles of the past that inspire the most awe, especially when we step inside and feel their forms in the flesh. The future does not do this. It cannot. Even though it excites us, it is too abstract and unfixed to touch. Okay, I'd like to welcome back to the show my co-host Bonnie.
Hello.
And today we have a wonderful guest, comic artist, musician, chanteur, television personality, impresario, filmmaker, actor, visionary, and messiah, Carlos Gonzales.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
Among a few things that you do, right?
This is just, that's just a drop in the bucket.
This is just the beginning. Those are like 99.9% of the things you do.
Yeah, you covered most of it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the other way around.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
think it's
point 0.1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
0.01.
Yeah, 0.01, yeah.
Yeah, 99.9 left unsaid.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally.
Fill in the blanks.
So, very good to have you on the show. Do you want to, in your own words, tell people what you are and who you do?
Well, it's always. I always look forward to the chance to just describe myself to people.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a 33-year-old man. I live in Providence, Rhode Island. Yes, I'm an artist, and I'm just whittling away, doing my work, and trying to do it well.
What are you working on right now?
I've been working on a long-form comic book, kind of a sort of cross between sci-fi and western and romance kind of story. It's wrapping up kind of near the end, but it's kind of the main thing I've been doing the last couple of years.
Wow.
Is that part of the same story that I'd spoken to you about before that I read like a couple of years ago?
No, that was just kind of its own sort of standalone western. Yeah. But
what's this one called?
Maybe it's called tentatively Gates of Plasma.
Nice. And what was that last film that you showed me called? At Emily's house, Jennifer's Dream.
Yeah.
What was like the main? Can you describe the plot of that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a woman, the titular Jennifer. She has this reoccurring dream of kind of walking through this hallway and going into this sort of green tinted bathroom, and she sees a guy with no shirt on kind of crouching in the bathtub, and she has amnesia, so she's going to therapy to try to figure out what that dream means. And I play her psychotherapist, and I basically I just propose an experimental form of therapy, electroshock mixed with hand cream, a face cream, and a hand bath, sort of like a soak, just for the hand, and this combination's supposed to kind of unlock that memory or the significance of that dream.
And when did you start working on that film?
That one was, I mean, it's only about 13 minutes long, so I shot it. We shot it all in one night, and then I edited it like a few days later, so it was a pretty quick burner there.
But that was made like in the winter, in the fall?
In the fall, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just did a new one with that same cast. It was, it's just me and two other people. The woman who plays Jennifer, her name's Cornelia, and the fellow who plays the guy in the bathtub, his name is Dan. We just shot a new one that I haven't edited yet, but I'm gonna do that and show it. Actually, Grant Corum, he's playing here on Monday, and so I'm gonna screen it at that. So
can you say a few words about that without ruining any surprises?
Yeah. I don't think I have a title yet, but it's basically I play an auctioneer, and I'm auctioning off this sort of dark green turtleneck, and the two of them are going back and forth bidding on it and sort of raising the price, and she wins the bid, and she kind of, when she picks up the turtleneck from me after the auction, she kind of asks me why the other fellow was bidding so high on it, and I explained that his wife Brenda used to dress like that, sort of wear these kind of metropolitan kind of turtleneck sort of a look, and she's she's long gone, and he's a bit sentimental, and that was why. And so she starts to feel a little bit guilty about that and tries to figure out a way to kind of sort of make it right, or sort of give him a little glimmer of hope.
Nice.
Yeah, I was really curious about the stuff you're producing right now and like the storylines that you have going on, and if they fit kind of like the ebb and flow of what's happening in the astrology, because there's, there are things that are more like immediate, that are like for the next couple weeks this will be like that, and this set of like this month this will be like that. But then there are things that are themes that are going on for like 3 years or the whole year, and if they've come into your work or into anyone's work that I speak to and see, because when we go through and look for examples for the show, we look into like fashion and art, and we'll find stuff, but it's always fun when you see it in more intimate work, or like with Saturn and Capricorn, there's like, it's a real shift into things being more foundational and cold and dry, and like the skeleton of things, and about mortality and time and constriction, and obligation and responsibility, and money as well. And I know you've done like corporate dramas before, and like right now Saturn, Mars is in Capricorn and applying to conjoin Saturn, and there's like within like the world events and things like that, there's expected to be like like crazy like power moves, like the deals that are made, and like the like life being played like chess. And so for like the corporate reality, things changing hands. And then with Jupiter and Scorpio, which is just for like the year, it's like a lot of digging stuff up from deep in your subconscious, and like looking at it and being like, okay, like can we pull up these like traumas and then say like, oh, we can do something with this, there's an opportunity there, and all the above I could really see in your work. And I was like wondering if any of those themes were like popping up.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the subconscious one from Jennifer's dream.
Yeah, totally.
It's all about that, just trying to pull that stuff out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can draw parallels between auctioneering and sort of power moves.
Yeah.
Well, the raising of the price and the really high price and like the competition.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would like to do more corporate drama. I think that's a good genre.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a good unexplored drama. People are so stuck on like the courtroom drama, you know.
Yeah. I think the boardroom drama is. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably plenty of surrealism that can be mined in that as well.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of like the heat in the night, you know, or the heat of the night or whatever. It's like the cold in the day, like in the air conditioned like corporate.
Climate
like,
controlled.
The cold of the day.
Yeah, the cold of the day.
Yeah.
That afternoon chill.
Yeah, totally. Just zoom in on an erect nipple of a corporate exec. It's a little too frosty.
Yeah, through the like, 1,000 count like Egyptian cotton shirt, you know. Yeah, the whole episode's just a slow zoom there. Yeah, really slow. Like cliffhanger, like you're almost there, but then it's like, no, maybe next week.
No, yeah.
But yeah, we did look into this Mars in Saturn conjunction, which is one of the bigger deals right now because it's worrisome as they're both dignified in Capricorn and they're the lesser and greater malefic. So you're like, well, what's going to happen, you know? Because when they came together last time in Scorpio is when I believe we had the Ebola breakout, you know, and so that's Mars dignified, but not Saturn. But this is Saturn dignified in rulership and Mars dignified in exaltation. But there's like this weird dynamic because Capricorn is so much about restriction and things like this. Like the furthest back I went was February 1st, 1960, and we had like Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 black students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University began a sit-in at a segregated Woolworth's lunch counter and a refused service. But it triggers all these events.
But they're allowed to stay at the counter.
Yeah, they're allowed to stay at the counter, but it triggers all these events of nonviolent protests in the South. And then 6 months later, they're served at that counter, you know? And so it really highlights that chess maneuvering aspect.
Right.
You're just like, we're going to put our players here. What's your move? We got in 88, Larry Flint versus Jerry Falwell, the court case. And then a lot of like the events that lead to the collapse of the Soviet Union, that whole story, which was like the Armenia, Azerbaijan, like border riots where the cops didn't do anything for like 3 days as riots erupted. And so you see the same kind of like power shifts and like who's going to make what moves and when. And then in the 90s, this is like the thing that really sticks out. One of them is February 28th of 1990 was that the last conjunction we had. And a day later, the Playboy that hits the stands has Trump on the cover posing with a Playboy model, and so that's like a pretty like direct correlation between then and now with like obviously this Stormy Daniels story now, and then I guess like he's always had that issue like framed in his office in the Trump Tower, and like even on the campaign trail, like he would sign it for people would like be like Donald, and then like he'd like sign that. He was very proud of this Playboy. He'd hold it up sometimes at rallies.
Is this the magazine he was spanked with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm sure that's like he's proud of that aspect of it.
Yeah.
He was like the only one of the only males to be on the cover, you know.
Wow.
And so that's like a direct like then now. Another one we get, another weird one is at that same time. Where do I have this written down? There's a company called the Steve Jackson Games Company that they released a lot of role-playing games, and they had this kind of manuscript. It was kind of like not a game itself, but kind of like a method of gaming called GURP Cyberpunk, and they were trying to catch up with the cyberpunk genre, and this was going to be their big break. And the Secret Service came in and seized it, and seized this one guy's all his like computers and all his files, and they believed that they were hacking into the government. They were hacking into like corporations, and that but Neptune was in Capricorn at the time, and Neptune can be like delusions and fantasies, and it ended up being not true. And they believed that if they were to release this gaming method textbook, that it was going to teach everyone to become like cyberpunk like hackers, and they were going to like take down the government, you know.
Nice. That's a power play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And then that company is the same company that still to this day, they're still around, and they print the Principia Discordia like Bible.
Oh, wow.
But then now,
Wow, shit.
you get articles right now in the news about corporations like Facebook hacking culture. Like it's like the system is looking back at us and hacking us, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so those are some of the stories from before. There's other ones too that where you see really like the block of power, like with like Exxon Valdez oil spill gets like hit with 5 criminal indictments in court right at that time, and then the president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, announces a ceasefire with the U.S.-backed Contras, and then there's like and then he's no longer president shortly after that, and Violeta Chamorro is elected the first female president of Nicaragua. So it's like these ceasefires and these indictments and these stops on this horrible activity. Sometimes you'll see that, which like we're getting right now with like the theme of like gun control protests and be like stopping automatic weapons. And so I looked at like right now right when Mars comes into Capricorn, within 52 minutes of Mars in Capricorn, we had the first automatic car fatality in the U.S. in Tempe, Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
And then a day later, we had like a conference in Palm Springs held by Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon. And it's actually called the Mars Conference, which is crazy. And it's right when the moon comes and hits Uranus, which is always to do with technology.
But what does Mars stand for?
It stands for, what do I have it here? It stands for the Machine Learning, Home Automation, Robotics, and Space Exploration. And so it was like the elite of all physicists and people in robotics and people in space programs and even philosophers, and it's invite only, and it's the third one. And the before there was like no press allowed, but this year he invited press because last year like one photo leaked of him in the cockpit of a giant 13-foot robot man that he was walking around. Gotcha. Yeah. So I think he was like, oh, we'll just invite them this time, and then and so that's like right with like the moon and Mars's sign like hitting Uranus and Mars's sign, and then Uranus is later going to go into Taurus in May. And a lot of these power moves, because I was saying like a lot of the power moves aren't going to be like Brexit or Trump or like North Korea, the stuff that's like really forward in the media. It's going to happen in places like this, like in Palm Springs with like exclusive, and you're not going to know, or like what like you're saying, like in the cold corporate office with like the erect nipple.
Yeah, behind the shade.
Yeah, behind the shade. Yeah. But yeah, and that like Tempe, the automatic car killing that woman happened like 52 minutes with Mars in Capricorn, and the ascendant was Scorpio, which Mars rules, and the moon is in Aries, which Mars rules. So it's like the most perfect example of, you're like, well, you try to find these themes, like what does this mean? Because it's obviously, if it's power moves and they're both the malefic planets, and it's going to like really portend some serious issues, you're like, what are they? And at like a quick glance, I just kind of went over it today. You're like, oh, well, definitely robots, and definitely like robots killing people. Or things that are automatic, like even the guns. It's like about the automatic weapon. It's like the automatic nature of the gun and the automatic nature of the car, you know?
Yeah.
Go car.
Have you thought about using any robots in your movies?
No, yeah, it's just a bit too, I don't know, cost prohibitive.
Absolutely,
yeah. Yeah.
We saw pictures of Steve Bezos with a robot dog. It was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I don't really see the point of the robot dog, because, you know, like...
Because we have so many dogs.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But also there's I mean, I guess it does like goes beyond fetching, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you want that fur, though. You want that nice warm fur.
You want the fur. You want that slobber. You want that Lyme disease.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Lyme's disease that's transmitted through like the dog saliva.
Yeah, so we were also talking about how a Chevron lawyer admitted that human activity is changing the climate. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, which really paralleled that Exxon Valdez indictment in the last conjunction.
But that was like a super power move, because there's 5 of the biggest oil companies being sued by San Francisco and Oakland, and they only sent one lawyer from Chevron, and then the judge had the 5-hour tutorial on climate change, and then, you know, they were so prepared, and I think that maybe the oil companies like underestimated the importance of this trial. So I think that's fabulous.
They just kind of had no other choice to just kind of...
Yeah, after like all of the information, the Chevron lawyer is like, well, yeah, that's true.
Well, it's so Saturnine that they're just like, we're going to crush you with the whole book. We have like the giant amount of facts piled up here, and we're not going to do it quick. We're going to like have like, I mean, this trial's been going on since September, and they're just like layering and layering it down, like it's just like that wearing down. And then right when Mars comes into Capricorn, it's like, he's forced to submit. He says uncle, right?
Yeah.
I looked at people who have in their chart as well Saturn and Capricorn conjunct, and the first 3 people I found was and they all have other planets in there, which make it really interesting. One is like James Spader, he's someone who's in those like corporate cold and the cold in the day, like kind of dramas, like, right. But he has
the secretary,
and like Crash, and like, he's like, he also has Venus there with like Saturn and Mars, so it's like the like real like the horny virgin, He's always plays that character, like over centralized, or like erogenous,
Yeah, but like deadpan too in this way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, very, very cold and dry. And then someone else who has it, but with Jupiter there, is Walt Disney, who very much like made like an empire, out of like out of this art, expanded this. He has it in the 5th house, which is like the house of creativity too. So it's like this creative expansive empire, you know. And then
Right, yeah.
the other person was Umberto Eco, which is interesting because he has the sun right there, and you know, it's like the cold, dry, skeletal, like, and then Umberto Eco wrote on ugliness, which was really interesting. That with this coming back now, with these aspects happening, there's the ugly. What is it, Bon?
Ugly shoes.
Ugly shoes in fashion, right?
They're very popular. And examining, basically examining what's ugly and making trends from that.
Yeah, like ugly on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
Dad sneakers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Have you seen a lot of ugliness on purpose out there, Carlos?
A lot of ugliness on purpose. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen any specific ugliness. I mean, my shoes are. I feel like I used to have more pride in my shoes. I used to wear, these kind of thrift store wingtips and sort of like archaic loafers and things like that. But I wear these like neon yellow $20 like running shoes that are just, and they just look so. I would say they're pretty ugly.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
that's pretty much what Bonnie's talking about. These shoes that look. The picture she showed me earlier today, they look exactly like neon $20 running shoes.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe some of these star settings have come into why I just have accepted wearing those, as that's okay in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, yeah. Or you got infected with the dog saliva.
Yeah. I definitely want to get infected with some kind of dog, any kind of strain that's carried by dogs.
Yeah.
if you need any dogs for your movies, Z is a pretty good actress.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, did dogs ever appear in your films?
No, I don't have dogs, and I have respect for them, but I haven't. Dog stories aren't the kind of stories that I have really been, chasing for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
Chasing.
but perhaps one day. I like the idea of the human dog. That could be a good story.
Yeah,
Definitely,
totally.
yeah.
What are the kind of themes that what do you really like, thematically, what are you concentrated on right now?
I mean, delusion is certainly a running theme, especially in this comic that I've been working on. Multiple characters they have this maybe sort of fire burning in them or something that they get excited about for a moment, but then it sort of kind of wilts before them at some kind of crossroads, and they realize that it was a delusion, and some deal with it better than others. Some are shocked so heavily they can't really bounce back from it, but others, they kind of can just appreciate what the delusion gave them for a limited amount of time, and even though it was a delusion, it still gave them some kind of insight.
Yeah,
day to day.
That's really great. I'm always advising people that happens a lot with like Neptune, and there's certain Neptune transits that we'll all have in our life because Neptune moves really slow. There's like a wave of Neptune transits that you'll have when in your early 40s that happens in tandem with these Uranus transits and Saturn transits that triggers what people refer to as the midlife crisis, And the Neptune element of it is that you start like feeling like you never achieved your fantasies, like, or your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, you start fantasizing anew and trying to like hurry up. And so people will like quit their job and like buy a Maserati and like speed to Burning Man, and like
midlife crisis. Yeah.
Get facial tattoos and like live on the beach in Hawaii or whatever. And then 2 years later, they're like, what
did I do?
Yeah. So it's like the advice is kind of what you're saying is to like engage with your fantasies rather than repress them, but to like watch them, be sort of ambivalent and just observe them and see what you can learn from them, like rather than just like identifying with them and being like, you end up at Burning Man in your Maserati and you're like, this is me, I've found my people.
Yeah,
I'm home.
It's I definitely think it's a balancing act, I suppose. Just being able to kind of find whatever positive energy out of it, but not let it cripple you in this way, or you can use a delusion or anything like that to kind of leave yourself wide open, and then if you're standing there naked, then you just gotta I don't know, do a little twirl.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's good advice. So what about like disruption? Do you feel like that's an element, like turbulence? Is that something that happens?
Disruption, I don't know. I suppose you could make a case for it, but I feel like a lot of things I end up working are fairly slow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's, maybe there's little moments. Disruption, I don't know if I see it as much though, but yeah, I suppose you can make a case for it. There's some disrupting elements in the comic, I suppose, or I like in westerns. There's contrasting the kind of dreamlike environment with, occasionally there's just this like kind of coarse ugliness that happens out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's lawless, and that's what's beautiful about it, but also what's frightening about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so disrupting or just ugly things happen, amidst the beauty or, that sort of environment. There's some of that in the Western aspects of this comic. So, somebody getting scalped or something like that, that's a disruption to your ability to have hair.
Yeah.
For sure.
Certainly. So what kinds of things are characters getting deluded about?
One character is, I guess one character is the head of he's a head of a corporate, like, pharmaceutical company.
Wow.
So there's some power plays, and
Yeah.
his delusion was chess, or that was like one of his early passions. But he would take amphetamines when he played chess, and he would he tied it into his sexual energy. He would tie cords around his testicles while he was playing to kind of ratchet up the tension. And he eventually kind of had a mental breakdown and had to go to a resort in the Alps. But so chess was one that, he was kind of chasing that star for kind of as deeply as he could, and then it kind of crumbled in front of him. And
Yeah, that's perfect. That fits with the astrology right now perfectly. How like we keep saying like with the Capricorn and Mars in there and Saturn in there is like the chess like actions, the stratagem, you know. Like,
yeah, I suppose that would play in. I mean, chess is all about power plays and things like that.
And that he is like a pharmaceutical like corporate figure, you know. Yeah. So what kind of do you have like certain kind of character types, like archetypes or kind of tropes that you're into right now?
Trying to think. I mean, a few, a little bit. I mean, there's like the mystic. Someone who, sort of a carnival kind of fortune teller type character. I'm a fan of, the like short, kind of crude, colorful, kind of comic relief sort of characters. So I've used that trope as well.
Yeah. That could be like your dog man.
Yeah, dog boy, dog man. Pick whatever gets you going. Yeah, and the romantic is obviously that's a pretty generalized trope, but someone who's kind of just kind of chases this kind of idea of just a sort of romantic outlook or of a dream kind of perspective on reality. That's a general trope that I guess is somewhat uplifting in otherwise darkness. So
yeah, a lot of Neptune stuff, like a lot that like imagination, idealism, but is also like the gateway for like delusion and hallucination, and where everything can mingle there, so there's like it's hard to tell like one thing from another.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's like a perfect landscape for that, even though it's like we think of that as like very watery, but like that desert landscape, where it's like possible for like where you see like the heat above the ground is like moving the air, and it's like
yeah, for sure.
So do you think there's like other like landscapes you're interested in after this, like after like the West?
I mean, being from Florida, I'm always, fascinated with the swamp as well. Alternately.
Yeah, alternately.
There's a lot of it's so rich with possibilities, just with all the insects and
totally
moss and things like that, giant ferns and oaks and so that's just to kind of stoke the imagination. That's always an exciting landscape. But I don't know. There's obviously something to be mined from all points, whether it's imagined space or Arctic zones. But I don't know. I've been hung up on westerns for the last few years, so I don't know if I could. I could just keep going back to that and probably be pretty happy, but yeah, hard to say.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see kind of like a swamp western,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all the
swamp oasis.
Yeah. There's all the layers, like you're saying, like underneath the moss there's like this one layer of like soil and decomposition, and then there's like water under that, and then there's like muck under that, and then like things can like be pulled out, like objects and characters can kind of come out of like out of rot or out of like, you know, like sinkholes and things, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think this brings us to the end of our time, but thanks very much for being with us.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. I love you guys, and I love chatting with you, and I think I gained a little insight as well.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. All right, well, we'll see you again
Thank you,
soon.
Carlos.
All right, take it easy.
Thank you for listening to Liminal Light. Our theme music was composed by the ever-talented Asa Irons. Today's background sound was by Cream Candles. Our guest was the incomparable Carlos Gonzales. I'm your host, Chrissy Puccieri Rapucci, and you can find me at atavisceral.com. ATAVISCERAL.com, where I post articles and forecasts, offer chart readings, talismanic concoctions, occult services, tarot, divination, and more.